play.
And another foul on board. His third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen.
Pick and roll. And a foul. Offensive foul coming up. Ken Valentine standing right there.
Izzo dying for a moving screen.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Moving Screen podcast. It's March 3rd. I'm Brendan Quinn of The Athletic, here with Dylan Burkhart of umhoops.com. It is 11:41 p.m. We are in just outside of Reagan Airport. Got a couple beers. Long day. Are you holding up okay? We both might be sick.
Holding up okay, got to watch some good basketball today, and we're coming down the final stretch here.
Yeah. I'm happy to be alive because Dylan drove to the airport today, and I got a ride out of it. And he goes with the very interesting philosophy of the less you can see, the faster you go.
And we made it to the airport extra fast, so...
I mean...
Not great weather here in D.C. this weekend.
Life in my hands, and he couldn't have given less of a damn. But we made it, and happy to bring this podcast to you. Very interesting weekend. I was lucky enough to be at both games, and then Dylan came to D.C. area for this game at Maryland. But obviously, Michigan State taking a loss yesterday in Bloomington. Michigan with the win over Maryland today here. We're going to start there, right?
Yeah, let's start with what we just saw.
I mean, for all things considered, you're down Charles Matthews. You're playing in, I would say, the third best home environment in the Big Ten.
It was certainly rocking in there. I mean, they had their 100-year celebration of Maryland basketball, all sorts of alums in the building. They had a flash mob, which was, I thought, a little disappointing for the level of practice that went into it, but we'll give them a pass. It was a great crowd in there, though, for sure.
Yeah. I would say Michigan State's actually, I think, maybe come down a touch in terms of the home crazy atmosphere.
Might change your opinion on
this is true.
Saturday there.
This is true, but ranking it this year, though, and I would say over the last 2 years, right now, it's probably like Mackey is probably number one right now. We're not talking all time. We're not talking venues. We're just talking crowd influence on the game. I would go Mackey 1, Assembly 2, Xfinity 3.
Not a lot of wins to cheer about this year at Assembly Hall.
I know. But the place is still raucous, it's a great, amazing place to see environment-wise. And then fourth would be Breslin, but people can yell at me about that. But yeah, it was definitely rocking over there today. And I didn't know. I thought it was going to be maybe a narrow Maryland win. I wasn't really feeling the way Michigan's been playing, and they're without Matthews. There's a lot going on. How did they do it?
For me, it was kind of a throwback to Michigan in November, December type of performance. It was really probably one of the best games Ignas Brazdeikis has played in a long time. I think he really benefited from sort of a little bit of enhanced role in the offense with Matthews out. Maryland guarded things a little differently, which kind of let him get going. And then Michigan needed him to basically every bucket, but he made big play after big play. He was attacking, drawing fouls, and then it was just Xavier Simpson kind of slicing and dicing him up with the ball screen like we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, some two-man game with them, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's really... It's the 1+4. It's just Xavier Simpson is going to do his thing, and he will find the best option. Whether it's Teskey, whether it's Iggy, Livers in the corner, or it's just throwing up a wild hook shot. And they were really, in many ways, they executed down the stretch in a way that Michigan State executed down the stretch against them, and they just completely failed to do a week ago.
I think you make a really good point. I hadn't thought about that it was kind of a throwback win to how they were playing really well earlier this year, right down to the late push at the end of the first half, which was kind of a staple there for a while when they were really going well, was making these kind of dramatic swings at the end of the first half. And they did it today. Just a meltdown by Maryland at the end of that half. That was huge.
Maryland melted down at the end of both halves.
True.
And it was really... Michigan's defense wasn't maybe as great all around as it's been in some other games, but for the
you're missing Matthews.
The last 10 minutes of those halves, they would string together 7-8 stops, and that kind of completely transformed the game. Because in the first half, it gave them just enough life to survive. In the second half, they made shots at the same time, and they kind of flipped it on its head, and Maryland didn't really have an answer.
But it was still, I mean, for the numbers, Maryland still made 6 of the last 7 shots from the field. Michigan needed to make shots, and that was, they go all game, can't buy a 3, and then suddenly daggers coming up from Iggy, from
Livers.
Isaiah. That was a huge shot.
Tasky finally hit one.
Yep. And it was with Xavier after having to sit, and they survived the minutes that he was out with foul trouble early in the second half. I say survived, barely.
Lost by 7 over 7 minutes.
Survived in that they won the game still. But yeah, I mean, I think he left him out too long. But whatever, in hindsight, it's easy to question it. I think if they lost, it would have been a much bigger talking point.
Yeah, I was shocked when he went to Eli Brooks off the bench at the under 16 instead of going with putting Simpson back in the game.
Right. There were the 2 timeouts. There was the first one where I was like, oh, interesting. He's going to try to make it another minute with him. And then there was a second timeout, and he came back out with him. And at that point, I was like, I think this is a bad call.
Yeah, and it paid off. Simpson was fantastic when he came back in.
He was.
Maryland didn't make a basket for 7 minutes after starting when Simpson checked back into the game, which kind of speaks to just how much impact he has really on both ends of the floor. Completely dominated Anthony Cowan.
Holds a mortgage on him.
Holds a mortgage on him, as you like to say.
4 for 15, 4 turnovers, 4 fouls committed in 37 minutes. It was a rough go for Mr. Cowan.
Ian Simpson posted a 12 and 10 double and hit
hook
shot after hook shot after hook shot.
I know that it's a thing, and it's almost like becoming like a cliche to make it the big talking point. But that thing is they are so ridiculous. The ones today, some of those were from 12 feet out. Over Bruno Fernando, the second leading shot blocker in the league, an NBA player, one who he finished with 5 blocks. He had that one on the Julius where he jumped through the ceiling to get
a couple on Poole.
He almost killed Jordan Poole with that one spike. But yeah, lofting, running skyhooks over Bruno Fernando went with. In key moments of the game.
They're not only in key moments in the game, they're key moments in the shot. They're always he's not looking for that shot with 20 seconds on the shot clock. It's always a last resort, and it's a pretty back-breaking last resort when you see a guy run across the lane and just throw up a hook shot and it goes in. It's quite something to watch.
Yeah, it was. So he made 4 of them, right?
He was 4 of 4.
So for those, I don't know how it came across on TV, but it was really funny in the arena, because the first one, the reaction of the crowd was kind of ooh, it was like a magic trick, he made a pigeon appear or something. And then the second one was kind of that a little bit amplified. The third one, people were just aghast and couldn't even believe it. And then the fourth one, they almost cheered. They just out of appreciation for the absurdity of it. The third one, there was people laughing, even though it was happening to their own team.
You never see it. And we've seen it all year.
It's such a ridiculous thing, yeah.
And it's the fact that he's actually really... It's not like he makes 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's a shot that he makes often, which is pretty ridiculous if you think about it.
And when you watch him go... If you watch him through warm-ups when he's actually doing them, it's not like he's just banging them in one after another after another. He's not at all. But then you put him in a game, put a 6'10" center in front of him, shot clock winding down, tired legs. Suddenly, he's flipping that thing in.
So I've got my little shot chart here. 57% from the right baseline. That's a really good number.
And those are all hooks. He's not taking any floaters on the right baseline. He's not taking any pull-up jumpers.
It's all hook shot. He only shoots 53% at the rim on layups. He shoots 57% with hook shots. That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's becoming like... And this was a game that Red Panda performed at halftime, and Simpson's hook shots were still the most ridiculous thing in that game.
Yeah. And how do you guard it?
I know.
And Beeline today said that he's got the left-hand hook. They just don't let him run that way.
Yeah. He's got another year
Saving
to show
that.
it. Yeah.
Saving it.
They'll be running lefty hooks when he's a senior.
He'll probably go in.
So, what else in this game really jumps out to you?
I think one big thing is Colin Castleton. Mm-hmm. He only played 5 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever it was in the box score, but he played well. Yep. He battled his ass off against Fernando.
Yep.
He had a big finish, and after the game, Beeline said, as much as we finally found our backup 5 30 games into the year. And he hasn't, even when Brandon Johns had that big game against Indiana, he didn't say, all right, this is our backup 5. He said, we're still trying to figure it out.
He said he still has to show it in practice.
Yeah, the fact that he said that today, I think, really speaks to a level of trust that they have not had at that position. And I don't know if it's also a little bit of desperation in the sense of, well, we might as well roll with the best option right now. Mm-hmm. But Castleton looks the part, and he makes mistakes. He still probably goes for a few too many block shots, which leads to fouls, leads to offensive rebounds. But he gives them something. He gives them some energy in there, and he was playing against one of the better bigs in the Big Ten and looked the part.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the other guys, they like when he's out there too. He gives them kind of a good spark of energy, and Xavier's yelling in his face and blah, blah, blah. And that dunk he had today was pretty nice. But the point that you made about him not backing down was the thing that jumped out to me. Because from our seats, where we kind of sit a couple rows back on the baseline, you're pretty close. And to watch him man up against Fernando, who is, it literally looked like a grown man playing, a tall 11-year-old. And, he put his chest in there, and Fernando, the first time he backed in, I'm sure 3 months ago, Castleton would have been under the basket. Yeah. But he held his ground, and I think the one that I'm referencing, he got called for a foul, but didn't matter, right? Because he didn't just get back down and dunked on. So that's, in this game, that's fine, because they just needed Teskey to get 2 minutes of blow here and there.
Yeah, and he had I remember at least one really good possession defensively in the second half where he was kind of denying Fernando inside, and it ended up being a stop. And if he can give you one stop when he's out there like that, that's huge minutes. I also think just long term, you look at that and you feel a lot better about the center position next year.
Well, and they had the luxury today of knowing they had a week off coming up. They only played 18 minutes off the bench total today. All 5 starters were over 32 minutes on the court.
And Simpson would have played 40
totally
if he doesn't commit that third foul.
Absolutely, yes.
So he's the 32 in that statement.
Right.
That's going to be it felt like the bench almost played well for them, and they played 18 minutes. That's going to be the reality of as long as Charles Matthews is
out. Matthews is out. And if he's out for the Big Ten tournament, then you're just whatever, man. I don't know how much you care about the Big Ten tournament if Matthews isn't out there, because you can't be playing these guys 35 minutes a game 3 days in a row or something.
Yeah, that used to kind of always be the Beeline route in the Big Ten tournament. Win that first game, maybe the second game, and then just kind of get out of there. It seemed like every year. Now it started making a habit of winning the whole thing.
True.
But in the past, that was really... I remember that one year, it must have been 2014, where they weren't a deep team, they obviously won the regular season, and then they ended up playing Michigan State
They
in
got
the
run.
finale and just got run out of the gym.
After they swept them in the regular
Yeah.
season, right? Yeah.
And that's usually you've kind of seen his teams run out of gas at some point in the
Right.
Big Ten tournament. But the last two teams weren't particularly deep,
No.
and they both made longer runs, right? Because they both started on Thursday.
They were just white hot. Okay, so what about this game? Let's say they are without Matthews for the Michigan State game, which I would anticipate. That's just my read. This is not like any, me offering vague information based on like some intel that I have. Like this is just my total feeling on the matter.
So, Beeline did say on CBS, we were at the game, we're not sure, that they hope to have Matthews back by the postseason, something along those lines. Today, he was asked after the game and said, he was asked if Matthews was ruled out for the Michigan State game and said, no, that's a week away. Why would we already have done that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of the official update, I guess, on the situation. It does seem like, I could see trying to play him if Purdue loses.
Fair.
I think that would change how much it would be worth playing him.
Right.
Now, obviously, I'm talking about mostly on Tuesday. I don't know if you're making that decision the day of the game.
Right.
But I think if there's a Big Ten championship on the line, I think that's a pretty legit goal for this team. And this,
Sure.
I could see maybe that changes your thinking if Purdue loses on Tuesday.
Okay. I can get with that. That's fair. But for the sake of this conversation, did you take away anything from today that if they are without Matthews, because look, for all we know, he could be out for the rest of the year. Like, like this is Michigan.
Yeah.
Michigan is not going to offer up. If they know, if the information is there deep down that he's probably, in quotes, going to be done for a long time, they're not going to just come out and
Especially
say that.
with the way the NCAA tournament works.
Yeah, there's no way. So, point being of this question, if they are without him, this was a much better, I thought, cleaner performance, other than shooting the ball, than the last one. It looked like they just looked more comfortable without him in the lineup, right?
Yes. Nebraska, they blew the doors off him. I don't think they played poorly.
I didn't say they played poorly. I just thought they looked a little bit more comfortable without him today.
I think it's similar to what we've talked about with Michigan State, where you still have an optimal way to play,
Yeah.
but you don't necessarily have as diverse of alternate options. And when you lose this much depth, your margin for error is basically sapped away, right? Like you don't have, if something goes wrong, you can't switch the plan. You basically have to execute the plan the perfect way.
Mm-hmm.
And that plan we've seen is going to just be Xavier Simpson in a high ball screen, passing everyone else into looks. And in some ways, and you can make the point that it's better to have two shooters on the wings,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that Isaiah Livers is not the same player defensively.
No.
And he's done some good things playing the three. He changes things a little bit because he's bigger, and he's not quite quick enough to stay in front of guards, but he's done a really good job of kind of chesting up, walling up on drivers, despite the fact that it feels like they should be able to blow by him a little bit.
Right.
So I think you see a way they can survive. I just don't know where you can pivot, if that makes sense.
Sure.
What do you see out of it?
Well, speaking of pivoting, to your point on Matthews versus Livers, like Isaiah's a one-dimensional offensive player.
Catch.
You saw him a couple times today actually put the ball on the deck in the half court, and it just didn't look. He didn't commit turnovers or anything like that, but like his, there was one sequence where I think he was around the top of the key, and he kind of went a couple dribbles to his right, pull up. It's shot that is literally bread and butter type stuff for Charles Matthews, and that's just not part of his game. He's a feet set 3-point shooter, and he can finish at the rim.
But if you can get him 8 threes a game, he's going to make 3 or 4 of them.
I agree. I'm just saying, Charles is just more of a scorer than him. So, is there? We were talking earlier, and did I read it? You said that some people have the theory that they're better without him.
Why not?
It's nonsense.
It's nonsense, and it can make them play a different way that can be successful at times. They're just less diverse in terms of options, right? Because they don't have... Matthews is capable of taking over a game, and we've seen that in big spots. He is usually going to be the best athlete on the court, going to guard the other team's best player, and you don't have that to rely on. I think it puts a lot of extra pressure on Isaiah Livers, and maybe at some point you get something more from Jordan Poole.
Yeah, maybe. It's a maybe.
That's the biggest.
The good news. So the good news for me today, on the Michigan side of things, if you're looking for, hey, that's a thing, is Iggy Brasdeikis. He has needed a game like this to get his, whatever bullshit word you want to use, swagger, whatever. But he looked like the guy from earlier this year. He was big in the moment, wanted the moment, and dude, this is the time of year where you've got to have a guy with balls. And that was a performance that can win you a game in the NCAA tournament. That type of stuff. It was really important for him to kind of get that confidence going and be the player that he is.
Yeah, I think Xavier Simpson really trusts him as an option to kick out of the ball screen too, and I think they're trying to diversify some of those looks, find a few extra ways to get him touches as a, derivative option out of that high ball screen. Right. And the way he's shooting it right now really is going to open things up for him. Yeah,
and it was not just at the basket, that's it. 2 for 4 threes, 7 of 8 free throws, right? Getting to the line, that's what you need. The most ridiculous stat for me in the game was that he drew 9 fouls while not being called for any in 38 minutes played.
And a lot of those were early and crashing the glass, kind of set the tone there. Mm-hmm. And he
did. Early, that was really key.
Yeah.
Early on. Just what he gave them, because they was, if I'm remembering correctly, not a great start at all. It was just either long rebounds turning into longer possessions, or they might have gotten run.
Mm-hmm. The second chance points are really a key in the first half for not really an explainable reason, but I guess you could say, hey, they're playing a lot bigger, right? Livers is going to give you more offensive rebounding probably out of that spot.
That's true.
Iggy's and what Maryland did was guard Iggy with a smaller player, which I think he's struggled more against length than against quickness. If I would say the games where he can't quite find himself offensively. So that could have also played into his big game. But he hit some huge shots, and everyone will talk about that late 3 he hit, but he hit a couple huge buckets when Simpson was off the court that kept Michigan still kind of in the game there, and that is... He just had that mentality today that he was ready to go and let everyone know about it in the whole arena.
So to get a week off, needed, I think, and then rocking and rolling into Saturday, and I have no idea how that'll go. We'll obviously talk about that later in the week. Do you have anything else on Michigan before we hop over?
I don't think so. I think couldn't have really drawn up a better week. This is probably their best conference road win of the season. It's their first conference road win over any of the teams with a 500 or better record in the league. They blew out Maryland. They could have gone in a lot of different ways after that loss to Michigan State. And it seems like they kind of got back to, their core a little bit, even without Charles Matthews, which says something, I would say.
Agreed. Okay, so Michigan State. Very strange game in Bloomington on Saturday. 63-62 loss. It was such a weird game in that, like, they should have won that game 8 different ways, 8 different times. It was constantly, they'd go on these runs, get the lead to 8 or 10, and I remember last week I predicted, my call was that they were going to blow Indiana out of the water. It was 9-2 to start the game, and I thought it was on. And then a couple other times they got the lead to 9, 10, whatever, and it looked like they were just a couple more baskets away from stretching it to 20 or something like that. And Indiana, to its credit, got answers from Justin Smith a couple times in the first half, which no one could have predicted. But always just kind of manufactured a response and always just stayed in the game. And Michigan State, for lack of a better way of explaining it, it was just hoping and praying kind of for the last 10 minutes that Cassius Winston could just pull something out of his ass a little bit, and no one was really making shots. They weren't rebounding the ball, getting killed on the glass. And, Izzo says that they were worn down and ran out of bodies. They had 5 days off before the game.
But they did basically run out of bodies, right?
I mean,
only 5 people played in the second half.
I mean,
right?
they looked exhausted, absolutely.
But there wasn't even really an option off the bench.
No. I mean, Lawyer's minutes in the first half weren't that great. Thomas Kithier's minutes were okay. They can't play without Arns right now. It's just a killer, and it's unclear whether he is going to be available this week. I think they have to sit him versus Nebraska, I think. Just give him some time off. It's not worth it at this point, and I think you can get by Nebraska with Connor George giving you minutes in that spot if need to be, right?
I think everyone's getting by Nebraska.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It was a really rough performance because everything was really right in front of Michigan State. And to lose a chance, potentially lose a chance at a Big Ten championship with a second loss to this Indiana team in a game that was won. I mean, they won the game. It was done. And just went scoreless in the last 4 minutes and found a way to lose. It was really kind of uncharacteristic for where this team is right now. And I thought they were going to find a way late.
It's one of those games where you look at the box score and you can't really understand what the hell happened.
Right?
Like, Cassius Winston has the best line in the game, 20 points, 11 assists.
He was really good.
Romeo Langford was 4 of 14 with 2 turnovers, no assists. Like, you look and you're trying to, basically Justin Smith went crazy.
Yeah. The same way Devontae Green and Deron Davis went crazy the first game. This time it was Justin Smith. I mean, Indiana beat Michigan State twice this year, and Romeo Langford went 10 for 32 in those 2 games combined. It doesn't make an ounce of sense. But Michigan State does have some deficiencies on the glass, which is really weird to see sometimes, just based on the brand, right?
Second worst defensive rebounding team in the Big Ten.
Like, that could be an issue with the NCAA tournament if they run into the wrong team, for sure. Because any team that can resemble Indiana, I don't care what seed or where they're from, it's clear that there's a chance that bad things can happen.
Is that the biggest takeaway for you? Is that the defensive rebounding? That's kind of the undoing. Indiana rebounded 38% of their misses in that game, which is not great.
Yeah, I mean, it was the lack of Michigan State's depth and the rebounding were definitely 1A and 1B in this game. And Indiana, for some reason, just continues to be this very strange matchup for them. What's his name? Rob
Finney.
He played very well. And it was interesting. So as well as Cassius played, Indiana did a good job on him because he didn't get threes. Everything that all he could really get was runners to the basket, and he made a bunch of them that were fairly, for a floater, were fairly spectacular. Some of the shots that he was making, but that was all he could get. And in the last 5 minutes, they just sold out completely on guarding him, and like everyone's going to do that.
Yeah, because there's no... what's the counter for...
Exactly. So I don't know what they do when this happens now.
You don't have a secondary creator. You're basically doubling down on the idea that Winston is the best ball screen guard in the country and he'll just find a way. But at a certain point, you just need something else. And that's, I think, the biggest thing you lose from, say, a Nick Ward, right?
Yeah. And like... they're in this bizarre spot rotation-wise where they need the defense and they need the rebounding, so they have to play Aaron Henry. Aaron Henry, though, I mean, at this point on offense, it's 4-on-5 when he's out there. And he made a three-pointer in this game, and it was his first one in forever. The Nebraska game, I think, just in like mid-January. And it was good to see, but like... there's no reason to defend him. Like, Romeo Langford was just playing as a free safety when he was in there on him, and you just dare him to shoot at this point. You want him to. So, for a team that's already reliant on one guy in ball screen sets, right? Like, they're just so one-dimensional, to then have one of the guys on the court just be basically a half a man out there, that's a tough spot to be in. You're asking a lot to be able to figure out a way to score on every possession.
Yeah, it's especially playing off the ball, right? Like, you just lose so much of that. You just need someone that can at least create space in the middle of the floor. Mm-hmm. And if people are just cheating off Henry all game, and Izzo after the game basically said he got asked about, like, how Henry can...
He said, at this point in the year, you are who you are, basically.
Yeah,
we're not going to snap fingers, which is the right answer. Like, Aaron Henry's not going to suddenly break out and start banging Jays all over the court. Like, that's not...
Yeah, and do you think...
The thing is, earlier in the year, like, he taped. He could go and get the ball, a couple dribbles, finish at the basket, assertive. I think right now he's just completely in his own head. He's completely lost his confidence, and... It's hard to see. I mean, we've seen it with freshmen a million times. This happened, and everything's gonna be fine for Aaron Henry. He's really good, but this year is not ending in solid fashion for him.
It's funny to compare how when Xavier Simpson's kind of a similar problem, and Michigan's solution is to just have him keep shooting, whereas Henry basically doesn't shoot. And I don't know if there's really a right option in those, but it's kind of funny to hear. Like, you see Simpson against Northwestern, right? Like, gets played off the court because he can't shoot, and then the next game against Northwestern, he comes out and hits 5 threes.
Yeah.
It's interesting to kind of look at how both programs think about three-point shooting in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But there was, like, even in the in-between stuff that, like...
Yeah, he just doesn't have
in theory,
any confidence.
Yeah, like he pivoted himself out of his shoes the one time. Like, he caught the ball, there was no one within 5 feet of him, and he straight up froze. And that was just, it was every telltale sign of a guy who is catching the ball and immediately thinking 5,000 different things, none of them being go get buckets.
Yeah, just being I know I'm supposed to do something here, but I'm not really sure that this is going to work out well, so I'm going to halfway do it and mess up the whole flow of offense.
I do not want the ball in my hands right now. This game also, if you really want to understand how important Matt McQuaid is, go ahead and watch the tape of this game. He...
in what sense?
When he's... Just how good he is when he is healthy, and what he gives this team, his ability to score the ball, his ability to attract attention defensively. For as much as Aaron Henry can be played off of, Matt McQuaid's the exact opposite. Teams are king on him in their scouting reports in every way possible. Like, having sat with Michigan, it was, for as much as they talked about Winston, they talked about McQuaid equally. That's like not exaggeration at all. So, he's out there running around on clearly a bum wheel, bad ankle, didn't have it. I would wonder if this were a non-conference game,
if he would have played. But, he's tougher than hell, so that's not really an option for him, and he went and played 35 minutes. and didn't look like the same guy.
Yeah, and we're coming up. So maybe you sit him on against Nebraska too. I don't know who else is going in there. Maybe Fife can go, drop a couple pounds and get in there and give them some run.
Get Gabe Brown some run.
Gabe Brown, yeah, maybe.
Nebraska's not beating anyone.
I would agree.
We saw that up close and personal, and that was a pathetic performance by them in
it was
Ann Arbor this week.
It was, but against Indiana, Gabe Brown did not get a minute. Marcus Bingham did not get a minute, and this is pretty much where they are in the rotation. It's so crazy how this has all worked out that at the beginning of the year they were playing like an 11-man rotation, and then they actually went kind of anti-Izzo in trimming this thing all the way down to this super tight rotation, and then of course they lose all these guys.
It's funny because covering Michigan, I get a lot of people complaining that Beeline needed to play his bench more in the early season and they'd be ready. Michigan State's kind of the example that even if you play early, it doesn't mean you're going to be ready to play in the real shit when it comes to February and March. And you look at a guy like Castleton, who doesn't play really at all, but apparently was figuring something out in practice. So I think you just kind of don't know with freshmen. And even playing a few minutes against Binghamton or whatever in the non-conference is not necessarily going to change the trajectory of their season.
And I'll tell you what, if they're still, if Barnes is out and McQuaid is kind of a just banged up version of himself, and they have a chance at the Big Ten championship in that game, the same way you say Matthews, you might just tough it out and go, even if it's 20 minutes, it's better than not playing. Man, I get one of those hard shell cast, throw it on Nick Ward, whatever, because even if it's, and we talk about the Nick Ward Michigan matchup and how it's not that great, but Jesus Christ, you got to you might just need 15 minutes of just a guy who can go on the court, right? It's...
Yeah, I would think that...
Wrap that thing up and send him out.
Yeah.
Totally.
I would not be surprised at all.
And by the way, what is this bullshit? We thought this was going to be one-on-one for the conference championship on the line, this epic game, bring 30 for 30 in, make the documentary, maybe I'll get a book deal.
Both teams can barely field 5 guys on the court.
It's going to look like closing scenes, like Band of Brothers out there or something. There's all these dudes dragging ass, bandaged up.
And the best part of it is that both coaches are going to be waiting to play their bench until the other guy puts their bench in, so the starters will just all play 40.
Totally.
That's what happened with DeJulius and Lawyer in the first game. Thought waiting for someone to blink, and then they... just left the starters on the court. I mean...
What a kick in the ass.
Really, it's going to be 5-on-5. Maybe just agree to play 30 minutes, 5-on-5, no subs.
Right.
I'd watch.
3 10-minute stretches, right, with orange slices and water breaks in between.
Some secret scrimmage rules. You can practice baseline out of bounds or something at the end.
That's perfect. Okay, so...
Instead... Everyone's hoping that Purdue loses to your favorite, Richard Pitino, on
Do we share our idea?
What's our idea?
That Izzo and Beeline should get on the phone together, come up with the game plan, send it to Richard Pitino.
Send over some PDFs. It would only be smart.
That would be a shrewd move.
It would only be smart.
I don't know. What are the chances that you're putting on that?
36%.
36% that Minnesota pulls the upset. It's at the barn.
It's a game Minnesota needs to
Minnesota
win to make the NCAA tournament.
has to win this game.
Minnesota's also only won 2 games since January. Not great.
Jesus. Wow. Because so right now they are 18-11 overall, 8-10 in the league. Their net is 56, which is a big, fat, bad number. They're 2-8 in quad one. Jesus. Yeah, they got to get, because they're not going to probably win at Michigan or at Maryland on senior day. Well, Maryland's
not looking to be in the best spot either right now.
No. I imagine they put it together in the last game of the year, though.
And Maryland won by 15 at the barn earlier this year. So Purdue needs this. Purdue also needed the Michigan game and played pretty flat. So hard to really get excited about it, but you know that both schools up in Michigan will be sitting there in their film room watching the game, cheering for them after practice.
Ken Palm projects a 73-69 Purdue win. Gives Purdue a 67% chance.
Purdue's only lost 2 games in the league since New Year's.
It's unbelievable.
Like, how did this happen?
Well, the schedule for one it's pretty generous.
I feel like that's a little bit overrated.
Well,
their league schedule's been tougher than Michigan.
They pulled games out of their ass. To their credit, which you have to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that 48-46 Indiana game was horrible. The Penn State game, they were gifted a foul, but then took advantage, right?
Nebraska.
Like that foul didn't win the game. The foul kept them in the game, and then they won the game. Nebraska. They've just found a way. I mean, they're kind of on this like magic carpet ride where it's starting to feel like, you know, a lot of bad karma and bad stuff that's happened to that program, from going all the way back to losing Robbie Hummel, losing Isaac Hawks last year, never going to the Final Four in like the modern era of basketball. You know, sometimes if you have a coach the quality of Matt Painter and, you know, you get guys who buy into the system, things are going to go your way every once in a while. I kind of think it's my same argument with coaches in the NCAA tournament. That if you go every year, eventually you're going to get a good draw, or the bounces are going to go your way, and you're going to get an Elite Eight run, or whatever it might be. But, like, you just got to get there every year, and it's so hard to do. And so these places that run out coaches who get there every year, like, you just don't realize how good you have it until you don't go to the tournament. Because if you just go every year, eventually it's going to go your way.
Yeah, if you're a good coach, you're not going to win the tournament every year, but
right.
You're going to get those breaks.
Coach K gets bounced early, right? Tom Izzo gets bounced early, but they're there every single year, and with good teams, and so you're going to get Final Fours.
John Beilein lost to Ohio.
Yeah.
Next year went to the Final Four. I don't think he. It's just different, right? It's not like he changed how he coached overnight.
Totally.
It just comes down to it's still basketball, and there's luck.
Last year, Jordan Poole misses that shot, and that's a bad loss to Houston.
It's a first weekend upset loss.
Last year, if they lose to Iowa in the second round of the Big Ten tournament, none of that stuff happens. Unlikely.
But that's the game.
But that is the game. You got to put yourself in position to be in position, or whatever you want to say. Like, if you're there, you're gonna be good. And you know, Matt Painter works his ass off. Is a good basketball mind. Gets good kids and coaches them up. Develops guys. and good things happen.
And
every
what
once in a
you're
while.
saying is why I think that I really rate the Big Ten regular season championship as meaning something.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's kind of, a lot of people don't look at that, and a lot of people, all that matters is the NCAA tournament, this and that. But for someone that covers a whole season of college basketball, that is really, I think, kind of the best team, the best kind of sign of what makes a good team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're at a point in this year where,
Don't mind us.
it's over here cracking more beers while I'm trying to make my
Podcasting
point.
at 12:30 at night on a Sunday in a courtyard at Reagan Airport. Yeah, I'm cracking beers. You can all deal with it.
Oh boy. But that you really have to give a lot of credit to Purdue this year and the job they did to turn the season around. They were almost sitting there with a losing record
Totally.
around Christmas, and
6
we were
and 5.
cracking jokes about whether they even make the NCAA tournament.
Lost
Shows
to,
what we know, a bunch of idiots.
lost to that. What has turned into be a trash heap of a Notre Dame team. Notre Dame is 3-13 in the ACC, and it is one of Purdue's losses this year.
You're also only as good as your schedule, and their non-conference was just brutal early.
Mm-hmm. It was. Yeah, that's the thing. In terms of like seeding and stuff, they have very few blemishes. What are they projected as, Purdue?
Ooh, I'm not sure. So here's my question. Big Ten tournament starts.
How do you feel about Lenardi? Can I check Lenardi?
Here, you can check whoever you want. I know you always get his email updates, and you're quick to pull them up.
I do.
Here's the question. Big Ten tournament starts tomorrow. Who's your favorite to win the tournament on a neutral floor?
That's a great question. I would like to know who. So if it's starting today, that means Michigan is not playing Charles Matthews. That means Michigan State is not playing Nick Ward.
Sure. No, put them both in. Say it starts.
Both in. Okay.
They both have been talked about as being potentially ready for the postseason. Let's say, put them both in there.
I would rank the favorites as 1 Michigan, 2 Purdue, 3 Michigan State. And I'll tell you why. Michigan, based in part because of recent history, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've all done it. They've been there. They know what it's like. And I think these guys now this is like a thing for them. Like, you catch them talking like, oh, we got to go win the Big Ten tournament again. Oh, okay, I guess.
And that was not a thing ever talked about.
No, of course not.
DC.
Right.
Ever.
Exactly.
It was always sort of something Beeline downplayed almost.
Definitely. But now, like, for this particular group, just these guys, it's a thing. So, that and, tough team to prep for on a turnaround, blah, 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 all those old tropes and blah, blah, blah. Purdue, because it's 15-3 in the league, and then Michigan State is 3, because even if Ward is back, I don't like a limping Matt McQuaid. Like, I want to see Matt McQuaid play healthy again, and Kyle Arns, if he can't go and give you good minutes, like, they just get really limited really quickly. And I know that sounds crazy because they just beat the hell out of Michigan, a week ago.
On their home floor.
But
who's your dark horse team? Like, who would you say has a chance to win it out of that top 3? Which is, I
how
think,
would that be a dark horse?
outside of the top 3.
Outside the top 3. Okay.
Because now I think pretty much those top 3 are locked into the top 3 seeds. Seems like it'll probably be Wisconsin, Maryland, and the 4-5.
I would say Wisconsin.
I was going to say Wisconsin, especially if Purdue's the 1.
Yeah.
I think that you basically look at Michigan State knock one or the other off.
Right.
And
Right.
I think Wisconsin as kind of a revenge game against Purdue after losing that game in overtime seems like kind of a natural fit there. Not that they've been playing particularly great, but that's just who I would look at.
It would also
right
be
now.
a natural fit for Ethan Happ to end his Big Ten career by getting the Big Ten tournament championship and walking off the court with that trophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know. Do you want to go over any scenarios, or is that too complicated?
I mean, you want to go over it?
Explain to people what. How about we just explain to people the chances of a 1 seed for either, because it doesn't necessarily, like, if you're a share, Purdue is not likely to get the 1, right?
Correct. Purdue would lose any tiebreaker
Right.
if it shares the league. But if Purdue wins both games this week, Purdue wins the league outright.
Right.
So if there's
And the key for either Michigan or Michigan State possibly getting not only a share, but also the 1 seed is playing at noon,
that is
which
key
is by
for
far
us.
the most important thing.
Probably most other people would rather the game is not played during the workday, but for us, we do not want to be covering the 9:30 game in Chicago every night. So that is very true.
Mm-hmm.
I think that.
Good.
I think that. Would you rather see Michigan and Michigan State meet in the 2-3 game, or be on other sides of the bracket and maybe meet in the finals? And how crazy is it that last year it was they really haven't played that often in the Big Ten tournament?
Right. It was the
2014 game.
Was that the only one?
I think that was the first time.
First one. I think I remember writing about that at the time, that it was this great oddity, and now it's happened a few times in a row. It could happen again. Me, selfishly,
For the love of the Big Ten game,
For
not the love of
Big
your
Ten
work,
game, it would be
work schedule.
It would be. I would love to see them play in the championship versus each other.
It would be kind of fitting if, well, I guess it wouldn't happen if they don't share the league, but all year we've talked about them as the two best teams, and now neither might even have a chance to win a part of the league on the final day.
But it would be. What are the scenarios that they would be on opposite side of the brackets?
It would be Purdue losing, I think Michigan State beating Michigan, and then Michigan would fall to a 3 still, and Michigan State would go to the 1 as the tiebreak, right?
Okay.
I guess it's probably a situation where the same thing happens to Michigan, where Michigan wins, Purdue loses. So if one of them...
But there's still a scenario that Michigan can drop to the 4.
I don't think so. After today.
Oh, after today.
After they beat Maryland, that's off the table.
Okay. Because I had a message from... Let me see. I found a scenario where UM wasn't thought that... If Purdue, MSU tie, and Maryland, Michigan tie, Michigan can fall to 4. I don't know if Maryland and Michigan can tie, though, anymore.
They can tie, but...
No. Maryland's at 12-7. They can't tie now.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Right, okay. So Michigan can't drop to a 4. Okay.
This is why we don't talk about these scenarios.
You don't think people want to hear
People
this?
don't want to hear it.
Oh,
We're
this is
rambling
great.
on it.
This is good
in the middle
stuff.
of the night.
This is good potting.
Good podcast. Yeah, something like that.
All right. Do you have any other takes?
Do we want to say anything about Michigan State, Nebraska?
Yes. Michigan State. I'm not. You know what? I'm not going to predict the score. I think I've literally been wrong about everything I've said for the last month. So I should probably take a break on predictions. But I don't know. I think for Nebraska to win, it would take some kind of religious uplifting, or
Nebraska's recent road games, 82-53 at Michigan,
Yeah.
95-71 at Penn State,
Which is a ridiculous
81-62 at Purdue, then they 71-64. So the last time they kept it remotely close was February 2nd. So, not a team that travels. We
No.
saw him on Thursday. Tim Miles benched the whole team basically at halftime. Not great. That team is ready for the season to be over, I think. I would say Michigan State by at least 15.
Yeah, whoever gets lined up with Nebraska in that opening day in Chicago is going to be feeling real good about itself.
Because it's probably going to be a team that is playing somewhat well. Because there are teams down there that are playing well.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to draw Nebraska, that's without a doubt.
So before we wrap this up, let's talk NCAA tournament.
Okay.
And right now, you've got Ohio State at 18-11, Minnesota at 18-11, and then sneakily Indiana
There you go.
sitting there.
It's getting on board.
I'm not getting on board. Sitting there at 15-14, but they have 6 Quadrant 1 team wins. As of tonight, I looked it up. They're only one of 17 teams in the country that have 6 or more Quad 1 wins. So, because of that, and only because of that, they are in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. Despite having 2 wins since January 3rd. Or no, 3 wins since January 3rd.
If
But
they
twice
win,
over Michigan State and once over Wisconsin.
Illinois on the road would probably be a Q1 win.
Yeah, I would think so.
Rutgers at home is not. But they would be 17-14, 8-12 in the league, with, I guess we'd say, 7 Q1 wins?
Mm-hmm. And if Iowa can win a couple of games, they might be able to
jump back up.
They could jump back up.
And we're talking about Minnesota has 2 Quadrant 1 wins?
Mm-hmm.
So who would you take?
I mean, if it were just, I want to put the 68 best teams in the tournament, or the 36 best, whatever.
At large.
I would put Indiana in over Minnesota, just because I think if they played each other tomorrow, Indiana would kick the shit out of Minnesota.
Who do you see either Minnesota or Ohio State making it?
Let me see Ohio. I don't see Minnesota making it. Ohio State.
Lost by 35 at Purdue. Presumably won't
So they
have...
have Northwestern on the road and Wisconsin at home. Winning out is tough. I think they split. That gets up to 19. Pick up a win or two in the Big Ten. I think they get in.
Presumably won't have Caleb Wesson until the Big Ten tournament. That's
Yes,
tough.
That is tough. That was not the time for a suspension.
Not great. So you could be looking at 6 Big Ten teams in the NCAA tournament.
Let me pull up Ohio State on the old net. 43. They're 4-8 in Quad 1, 4-2. So they have 8 Quad 1 and Quad 2 wins. 5 road wins. They went 10-1 in the non-conference.
Here's the real question: Does a
I
Big
think
Ten
Ohio State gets in.
does a Big Ten team win the NIT?
That's the big question.
The Big Ten could have the Final Four of the NIT. Could be a great event in Madison Square Garden. Back-to-back years where the Big Ten takes over the Garden.
I still feel like the league. I still feel like they're going to find a way to get 8 in. I don't know how, but I still feel like they're going to find a way to get 8 in the NCAA.
Ohio State and Indiana.
Yeah.
Indiana probably has to win a couple games in Chicago, probably.
I would think so. And they would be put in a position of probably getting a shot at Michigan State, or Purdue, right? And that would probably have to be, if they play Michigan State for a third time, sweet Jesus.
If they get Purdue, though, like, I just feel like on paper Purdue is so much more vulnerable, but I don't know if that's actually...
I've been saying this for 2 months.
But they keep winning.
I know.
We can't explain it.
It's very distressing. All right. Well, I'm going to say 8. What do you say right now? 7?
7.
Okay. So you think Minnesota misses? You think all 3... Wait, do you think all 3 miss?
I think Indiana or Ohio State gets in.
Indiana or Ohio State?
I'm not sleeping on the Indiana bubble chances. I literally laid out this scenario last week, and you told me there was no chance Indiana was going to lose by something like 20 points to Michigan State.
I know, I did. That's why I didn't think Indiana had a chance of still being in the conversation. I thought they were going to lose by 25 on their home court to Michigan State. So, are you still finishing your first beer? Jesus. Sweet.
I forgot it was down there. I've been drinking both of them.
Come on, man. Get it together.
It's been a long day.
It has been a long day. I still have a story to finish. Okay. I think that'll do it. We're going to do a midweek pod.
Previewing the big game part 2.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out if both teams can even feel the
Seriously.
starting lineup.
Be rolling in. Who would win a game of walk-ons, Michigan or Michigan State?
Who win like the all-star games like they
Yeah,
do on the off days?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. It would be quite the duel between C.J. Baird and Connor George, for sure.
We need a B game. Not even just anyone that doesn't play. Give me
Okay.
Marcus Bingham, give me all those guys out there.
I love that. I would love to see that game.
Everyone, the coaches are scared to play in the actual game. Like,
yes.
remember when
they
you
should
were
do that
in,
they should do
Spain?
that in Diamondale at the
Moneyball.
at the Moneyball gym.
That's going to be the Saturday afternoon game.
I'm loving this idea. So you would have, Michigan would have. Are we going Brooks? Does Brooks count? No, he's probably part of the rotation. So we're talking Brandon Johns, Austin Davis, David DeJulius, Colin Castleton, Adrian Nunez, right?
Yep. Against
I'm pulling that up. Hold
Gabe Brown, Marcus Bingham,
Mm-hmm.
Foster Lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we filling out the team with?
Kithier,
George.
and you put C.J. Baird probably on Michigan's.
Yep. That'd be a fun one.
It would be. We gotta make this happen.
It's like
We get the moving screen naming
we can
rights.
sponsor it. Oh boy.
Well, feel free to hit us on Twitter with your predictions for this game. I think we need to think about it a little bit more. Maybe when we get to the preview pod, we'll give our picks on
who would win the All-Star game.
Yeah, this would be like the real game. This would be like the what's that puppy bowl thing before the Super Bowl?
I think it's called the
Is
Puppy
that
Bowl.
Okay. All right, it's probably time to end this
Trying to
podcast.
end this as soon as possible.
I think it only got better with age. Okay. Well, thank you for everyone for listening. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to umhoops.com. Subscribe to theathletic.com. Read Dylan's analysis and read my wordy stories. And we'll be back later this week. Do we have a date for this?
When does Michigan State play?
Tuesday. The game is Saturday.
Try to record Wednesday.
Wednesday? All right. So look forward on Thursday then probably. And that'll do it. Thanks for joining us. And be sure to tip your bartenders. Did I say everything? Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
Be sure to tip your bartenders and your servers. Good night.